The ocean hid them for millions of years. There is a boundary in the sea where the sun's reach falters, where even the strongest rays fracture and vanish into liquid night. Scientists call it the midnight zone, but to those who dare to imagine what lies beyond, it is something darker and endless, yawning abyss that swallows all light and memory. This is where the ocean ceases to be a familiar cradle of life and becomes an alien expanse. It is here, in the deepest scars of the planet, that the human imagination has always lingered, restless, haunted. The abyss begins in silence, but it is not empty. It presses in with unimaginable weight 8 tons upon every square inch at the ocean's deepest trench. It chills with a cold that does not simply freeze, but immobilizes, suspends, preserves. It is not water as we know it, but a medium of pressure and darkness, where fragile machines groan under strain and steel bends like wax. Few things survive there, and yet, astonishingly, life thrives. It thrives in ways that defy reason, defy comfort, defy human comprehension. And yet we know almost nothing. Of the seafloor that encircles our planet, more than 80% remains unseen, unmapped, unknown. We send probes into distant galaxies with greater certainty than we peer into our own oceans. Satellites capture the faint glow of stars billions of light years away, while the world beneath our own waves remains a blind spot. What irony that we search for extraterrestrial life while vast kingdoms of darkness still conceal their truths beneath our feet. The Mariana Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench, the Java Trench, these are the deepest wounds on the surface of the earth. They are cuts into the skin of the world, plunging deeper than Mount Everest is tall. To descend into them is to leave behind everything familiar: warmth, air, light, and the illusion of safety. For centuries, humans only imagined such depths. Sailors dreamed of bottomless chasms where monsters stirred in the black. Even today, though science has touched their edges, the mystery remains. The trench does not give up its secrets freely. It swallows cameras, it swallows signals, it swallows certainty. Consider what it means to fall into such a place. To sink, slowly, past the last hint of sun. The twilight zone fades first, the region where dim blue light flickers faintly, where strange fish still cling to the remnants of the surface world. Below it, the true midnight begins. Beyond that, the abyss itself an environment so hostile, so alien, that even language fails to capture it. We call it Hadal, named after Hades, the underworld of the Greeks. It is a fitting name, for this realm belongs not to humanity, but to something older, something darker. There is a profound irony in this darkness. We often think of wilderness as forests or deserts, but the ocean's depths are the last untouched frontier. They are the only true wilderness left on Earth, and they have remained so not by chance, but by resistance. Every attempt to pierce their secrets has been met with silence or sabotage, with pressure and isolation, with the reminder that some realms are not ours to conquer. In 1960, when Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh descended into the Challenger Deep, they touched the very bottom of the trench. The journey lasted hours, the descent alone longer than most flights across continents. They saw something unexpected there, life, stirring even in the Hadal silence. But what else did they glimpse? Their report was brief, their photographs blurred. Perhaps some things cannot be carried back to the surface intact. Since then, few have returned. Machines do the work now, though even machines fail. Cameras crack, signals vanish, instruments falter under the abyssal weight. Each descent is like sending a whisper into the void, never knowing if it will return. And when the data does return, it is always incomplete small fragments of a story too vast to tell. The abyss is not passive. It seems to resist our probing, not by intent, but by nature. A place so crushing, so absolute in its hostility, seems almost to guard its own truths. We are intruders there, fragile bodies clinging to life. And for all our advances, We are as vulnerable as the first sailors who peered into stormy seas and imagined monsters waiting below. It is easy to dismiss such fears, easy to call them superstition, yet fear itself is instructive. It is a sign that our instincts recognize something primal, that the void is not merely absence, but presence, that something watches from the dark, that something waits. Scientists remind us that most of the creatures we know from the deep are not monsters at all, but adaptations. Strange fish with transparent flesh, worms that feed on chemicals, shrimp that see heat instead of light. Yet in their grotesque forms, we glimpse something unsettling, proof that life can twist itself into almost anything. If such creatures exist in the margins we have glimpsed, what greater forms might dwell in the margins we have not? The abyss is timeless. While continents shift and civilizations rise and fall, the trenches remain. They were carved by tectonic plates colliding, by the earth folding in on itself. They are millions of years old, and in all that time, they have hidden their tenants well. Perhaps the things that dwell there are older than we imagine, older than trees, older than mammals, older than humanity itself. In the black silence of the trenches, evolution may have taken a different path entirely, one we have not yet dared to follow. And yet, we are drawn to it. The mystery pulls us closer, whispering promises of discovery. But discovery carries cost. Each time we descend, we risk not only machines and lives, but also sanity. To witness the abyss is to confront the limits of what humans are meant to see. There is a reason so few have returned. There is a reason so much remains unspoken. The abyss begins where light dies. But perhaps it does not end there. Perhaps it stretches further, into caverns and fissures that even our instruments cannot trace. Perhaps it harbors realms we cannot imagine, and creatures whose existence would upend everything we know about life on this planet. The ocean is not empty. It is not silent. It is not safe. What horrors might still lurk unseen? That is the question we are left with. In the blackest depths, hidden from sight and shielded by pressure, lie secrets that have waited millennia for discovery. And when those secrets are finally revealed, we must ask ourselves, will we be ready? Or will the void remind us, as it always has, that some doors should remain closed? The ocean has always been more than water and tide. To the ancient mind, it was an abyss without end, restless, unknowable, hostile. From its darkness, stories arose. Stories of serpents that coiled around ships, of beasts whose tentacles dragged sailors beneath the foam, of shadows so vast they blotted out the sun. These were not merely tales meant to frighten children. They were warnings etched into memory. They were fragments of encounters retold until myth hardened into legend. The Hebrews spoke of Leviathan, a beast born of chaos, coiled in the depths, waiting for the day of judgment. The Norse feared Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, so immense it encircled the entire world beneath the sea. To the Greeks, there was Ketos, the sea monster sent to devour Andromeda. And in the icy waters of the north, sailors whispered of the Kraken, an entity with arms like living storms, dragging entire vessels into the abyss. For millennia, seafarers had no explanation for the strange and the terrible. The unknown became monstrous, and monsters became gods. Yet across cultures and centuries, these myths bear uncanny resemblance to one another. Perhaps memory itself is not invention, but record. Perhaps humanity's collective fear of the sea was not born from emptiness, but from encounters with things real enough to leave scars. In 1180, Japanese fishermen told of the Akuro Kamui, a red, glowing cephalopod of unimaginable size, capable of capsizing boats with a single movement. In Inuit traditions, the Kalupalik waited beneath the ice to snatch children who strayed too close to the shore. In Polynesian lore, Tangaroa, god of the sea, ruled over creatures that emerged only in storms, reminding mortals that the ocean was never theirs to command. These were not isolated myths. They were fragments of a global tapestry, stitched together by fear and experience. The sea was a common adversary, and from its black heart, it seemed to send emissaries, beings so alien they demanded explanation. Modern science offers rational answers. A giant squid mistaken for a kraken. A pod of whales mistaken for a serpent. Shadows of storms, magnified by fear. Yet the truth may be more complex. For in recent decades, exploration of the deep has revealed creatures that rival mythology. The colossal squid, with eyes the size of dinner plates, armed with hooks upon its tentacles. The oarfish, serpent-like, growing up to 30 feet, rarely seen except when storms cast them on to shore. The gulper eel, whose jaw unhinges to a grotesque degree, a mouth like a living net. To the ancients, a single glimpse of such forms would have been enough to seed legends that endured thousands of years, enough to brand the ocean as a place of monsters. And yet, for every known creature, there are countless more we have not found. Science admits it. The vast majority of deep-sea species remain undiscovered. Could it be that myth was less invention than prophecy? That what was once called Leviathan still moves unseen in the trenches waiting? Consider the symbolism of the dragon. Across cultures, the sea serpent is not merely a beast, but a force of nature. In myths, to confront it is to confront chaos itself. In every story, humanity does not dominate the ocean, it barely survives it. Perhaps the ancients were telling us something more than stories. Perhaps they were testifying to the abyss as it truly is, a place where humans are prey, not master. Even now, echoes remain. Fishermen return with tales of vast shadows beneath their boats, of bioluminescent forms the size of whales, of screams carried through the water that no known animal makes. Governments dismiss them as error, as misidentification. But the stories persist, as they always have. And perhaps the persistence is proof. In the 19th century, whaling ships reported battles with creatures they could not kill, things that struck from beneath, leaving scars across hulls and vanishing into the dark. In 1978, off New Zealand, a Japanese trawler captured what appeared to be the remains of a massive sea creature. Its body was cartilaginous, its head serpentine. Scientists called it a decayed shark. Sailors were less convinced. And what of the modern myths, the strange signals recorded by sonar, the unexplainable tracks upon the seafloor, the sudden vanishings of vessels? Are these not the latest verses of an ancient song? The trench, the abyss, the black beyond light, this is the birthplace of monsters. And whether they exist in flesh or in memory, their influence is undeniable. Myths do not endure for centuries without fuel. They survive because they speak to a truth, even if veiled. Perhaps the kraken was a colossal squid rising from the abyss. Perhaps Leviathan was the image of something glimpsed at the edge of consciousness, a predator beyond scale. Or perhaps, more chilling still, these myths were not exaggerations, but understatements. Perhaps what was seen was only a fragment, only the surface of something greater. The ancients spoke of monsters rising. Today, we look down into the trenches with machines and sonar, hoping to see what they saw. Yet for all our science, we are not immune to the same dread. We feel it in the recordings of unearthly sounds. We see it in the eyes of deep-sea predators that reflect no warmth, only hunger. History tells us that humanity invents monsters to explain the unknown, but the ocean remains unknown still. If myths were born from ignorance, then why do they align so well with discoveries we make only now? The abyss remembers. It remembers in scales and tentacles, in silhouettes that breach the waves, in the silence that follows the disappearance of ships. And humanity remembers too. Through myth, we have carried fragments of that terror forward, unwilling to forget. As we venture deeper, the question lingers. Were the monsters of ancient myth nothing more than shadows on the water? Or were they messengers of something real, something that still waits in the unseen? The kraken, the Leviathan, the dragon of the sea, perhaps they are not gone, not imaginary, but merely hidden, biding their time in the blackest depths where stories are born and where nightmares are nourished. Darkness does not silence life. In the abyss, it breeds it. Yet survival in a place where sunlight has never touched demands impossible adaptations, forms so alien they could be mistaken for creatures from another world. Here, in the black, predators do not stalk with eyes or chase with speed. They seduce, they deceive, they strike with horrors honed by endless evolution. The anglerfish drifts as if lifeless, a shadow in the void. Yet from its head dangles a lantern of living light, a lure that trembles in the eternal dark like a false promise. To an unsuspecting fish, it resembles hope, the glint of safety, the shimmer of food. But approach too close, and jaws armed with needle teeth close in. The angler's mouth is grotesquely oversized, its stomach elastic enough to consume prey half its body length. Here, beauty and death glow from the same source. Deeper still swims the dragonfish, a phantom armed with weapons that defy belief. Its body shimmers with patches of faint red light, invisible to most eyes, but to the dragonfish it is a private spectrum, an unseen code of communication and hunting. Its fangs are transparent, invisible even when bared, giving the illusion of an empty mouth until the strike comes. A predator designed by nightmare, yet perfected by nature. Then there is the gulper eel, an aberration among aberrations. Its jaws stretch open like a vast, living net. What it cannot chase, it engulfs. With a single gulp, it swallows prey whole, sometimes too large for its own survival. Its stomach balloons grotesquely, as if to remind the abyss that hunger itself is a predator. These are not myths, not allegories from forgotten cultures. They are real, alive, drifting in the unseen corridors of the ocean. Yet their reality feels like hallucination. The human mind, accustomed to the creatures of the surface, recoils at these beings born of pressure, silence, and cold. We see in them reflections of something older than civilization, fear of the unknown, of jaws that emerge from void. And still, the abyss does not reveal all. For every anglerfish captured, every dragonfish glimpsed in the beam of a submersible, there may be thousands more never seen. What else, lurking deeper, bends light and shadow to its will? If small predators here evolve into monstrous spectacles, what might titans of the trench look like, beings never recorded, never dragged to the surface, never named? Bioluminescence itself seems like sorcery creatures conjuring light in places where light cannot exist. Some use it to confuse enemies, scattering false stars into the black. Others use it as camouflage, glowing faintly so their bodies blend with the dim shimmer above, tricking predators into mistaking them for absence. Still others wield it as weapons, dazzling and luring, creating illusions in a world that knows no dawn. But the question is darker still. Is this light a defense or an invitation? What if the glow is not meant for prey, but for something larger, something unseen, something that watches from beyond the submersible's reach? History whispers that when men of old told stories of will-o'-the-wisps, of ghostly lanterns leading travelers astray, they may not have been imagining. Perhaps they were remembering. Perhaps the abyss has always played its tricks on human memory, offering lights that lead only to death. In these predators, we glimpse not only survival, but a philosophy etched in biology. Deception is power. In the deepest dark, strength is not muscle, nor speed, nor size. It is manipulation, a flicker of falsehood in the void, a lantern that is not a lantern, a mouth that looks empty until it is filled with teeth. And if such power exists in creatures small enough to fit in the palm of a hand, what might reside in the titans of the trench? Scientists speculate cautiously, their words measured. They call these adaptations brilliant, ingenious, efficient. But in their voices, there is always hesitation, all cloaked in restraint, because every new discovery suggests that what we know is still only a fraction of what lurks. Every bioluminescent predator recorded is a reminder that Earth itself may be far stranger than our imagination allows. For millennia, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered about life beyond. But perhaps we should have been looking down, into the black, into the flickering lights that beckon, whispering promises of discovery, while concealing hungers that have waited for eons. The abyss does not reveal its full arsenal. It shows us only glimpses, a lure swaying like a ghost's candle, a fang invisible until it pierces flesh, a jaw opening wider than reason. These are fragments of an unfinished revelation, pieces of a puzzle that may never be complete. In their lights, we see more than survival. We see warning, a reminder that in the kingdom of the abyss, deception is king and hunger never sleeps. The predators we know may be only the opening act, the smallest brushstrokes of a canvas painted in terror. For beyond the angler, beyond the dragonfish, beyond the gulper eel, there may be others. Creatures without names, without witnesses, without myth. Monsters that do not reveal themselves in the beams of explorers, but wait, patient and unseen, deeper than we dare descend. And if they do exist, perhaps they do not need to lure us. Perhaps we, blinded by curiosity, are already moving toward them, drawn not by their light, but by our own. The descent of science, of exploration, of human hunger to know, a hunger that mirrors theirs. In the abyss, predator and prey are mirrors of each other. The ocean is a world of silence to human ears. But in its crushing black corridors, sound travels farther than light, carrying secrets across thousands of miles. It is through sound, not sight, that the abyss speaks. And sometimes it whispers things that defy explanation. In 1997, an underwater microphone stationed deep in the Pacific recorded a noise so powerful, so vast, that it could be heard by sensors over 3,000 miles away. A low, thunderous groan rising like something waking from sleep. It was called the bloop. At first, scientists speculated. Tectonic shifts, volcanic tremors, the cracking of ice. Yet the frequency, the rise and fall, matched not geology, but biology. Something alive. Something larger than any creature we have ever known. Then came upsweep, a repeating pattern of haunting tones recorded season after season, always in the same remote stretch of ocean. It droned like the ghost of machinery, yet no engine has ever been found there. Others followed. Whistle, Julia, slow down sounds named like mysteries, catalogued like suspects in an unsolved crime. They echo across the abyss, vanishing before we can trace their source, leaving only questions. If the ocean is filled with song, why do these voices feel like warnings? Why does every recording carry with it the chill of being overheard? Theories multiply. Some point to the grinding of icebergs, the shifting of Earth's crust. Others dare to imagine something else, creatures vast beyond comprehension, their bodies too enormous to be seen, their calls too deep for us to follow. The bloop, they whisper, was not the breaking of ice, but the breathing of a titan. Perhaps the upsweep is not geological rhythm, but communication, an ancient language spoken in vibrations, hidden from our eyes, but not our ears. And still, the ocean does not answer. Every sound recorded is a question thrown into the void. The void replies with echoes, never truth. Consider this. Whales, the largest animals known to science, can communicate across oceans with their songs. But what if whales are not the loudest singers in the sea? What if they are merely one choir in a vast, unseen orchestra? Perhaps the songs we have caught, these anomalous cries, these unclaimed voices, are fragments of a symphony that was never meant for us. There is another fear, that the sounds are not communication at all, but warnings. That the slow groan of upsweep is not a song, but the sound of a gate, something ancient, opening or closing in the abyss. That the bloop was not the stirring of a beast, but the consequence of one. A world we cannot see shifting its weight, reminding us of its presence. The abyss is not empty, it never was. It is a cathedral of echoes, and every note carved into its walls is a testimony of what dwells there. We, with our fragile microphones, have only begun to listen. But listening brings its own terror, because sound does not ask permission. When you listen, you are also heard. What if the bloop was not a creature revealing itself, but a creature answering us? What if our submarines, our seismic tests, our restless probing into the trenches were the first call, and what we recorded was the reply? In the black silence of the trench, sound is life. To send it, to receive it, is to announce existence. Every ping of sonar, every echo of our machinery, may be a flare in the dark, telling hidden things that we are here. And if they are listening, what else might they be waiting for? Paranoia grows in this uncertainty. Fishermen tell of deep vibrations rattling their hulls, felt in bone rather than ear. Submariners whisper of low hums that seem to circle their vessels, chasing them through black corridors where no light penetrates. Some refuse to speak of it at all, for fear of what might be summoned if they give words to the memory. Science does its best to anchor us to reason, reminding us of glaciers, of fault lines, of pressure shifts. But every explanation feels thinner than the silence that follows. If ice alone explains the bloop, why does its sound mirror the rhythm of a living thing? If tectonics account for upsweep, why does it return with the seasons, repeating like a ritual? We do not know. We may never know. But the ocean does not care for our comfort. It sings in tongues older than language, and in its voices there is dread, for the abyss is not silent. It is only waiting. And sometimes, if you dare to listen closely, it feels as though it is waiting for us. The deeper we go, the stranger life becomes. In the crushing dark, where sunlight is only a rumor and food drifts down as the dust of death, the laws of survival shift. Here, small things grow strange and great things may grow monstrous. Biologists speak of deep-sea gigantism, a phenomenon where creatures in the abyss evolve to sizes that defy expectation. Isopods, distant relatives of the garden pillbug, grow to the size of dinner plates. Squid stretch far beyond their shallow water cousins, with arms that seem spun from nightmares. Even amphipods, tiny scavengers of the sea, swell to sizes 20 times greater than those near the surface. If such inflation can occur in crustaceans and worms, what then of predators? What then of hunters we have never glimpsed? The theory is simple and terrifying. In the abyss, the rules favor the colossal. Cold slows metabolism. Pressure alters biology. Scarcity demands efficiency, and a larger body can store more energy, travel greater distances, and wait longer in silence. Life here is patient, and patience breeds giants. The giant squid was once myth, dismissed as sailors' fantasy, until carcasses washed ashore, revealing suckers rimmed with teeth and eyes the size of plates. Its cousin, the colossal squid, proved even more fearsome, with hooks carved into its limbs. These we now acknowledge. But what of the greater shadows? What of the predators large enough to hunt whales, to stir the waters with movements mistaken for earthquakes? Whales themselves bear the scar's circular sucker marks etched into flesh, wounds too vast to be made by any known species. Scientists shrug, offering the colossal squid as answer. Yet the scars suggest something larger still, a hunter that leaves only whispers in the wake of its hunger. If nature has already birthed predators of such scale, why assume it has stopped? The trenches stretch deeper than Everest is tall, offering a cathedral of pressure and night where anything might dwell. In this hidden architecture of Earth, evolution may have written chapters unseen, creating leviathans that make whales seem small. Some researchers propose that gigantism could give rise to creatures measured not in meters, but in lengths rivaling city streets. They imagine serpentine hunters with lantern-lit jaws, cephalopods whose arms coil like undersea storms, fish with bodies armored in pressure-forged scales. These are not fantasies. They are extrapolations, drawn from rules we already know. If amphipods grow monstrously in the deep, why not their predators? Why not beyond? And here lies the terror. We would not see them. Not truly. Our submersibles are fragile eggshells of metal, venturing for minutes into what may be their eternal domain. Cameras fail, instruments break, and light carries only a few feet before the abyss swallows it whole. A creature longer than a subway train could glide beside us unseen, its presence betrayed only by a ripple, a vibration, a flicker of sonar that disappears too quickly. Legends tell of leviathans rising from the depths. Today, we name them kraken, sea serpents, monsters. But what if such myths are not relics of superstition, but fragments of memory? Human history is long, yet shallow. Our ships have crossed the oceans for only a few centuries, while the abyss has existed for millennia. Perhaps those before us saw what we fear to imagine, glimpsing titans drawn to the surface in hunger or rage. Theories of megafauna echo in naval reports, in unexplained sonar readings, in whispers from mariners who swear they saw shadows larger than ships. Officially, they are dismissed as illusions, distortions, tricks of light. But how often has science mocked before it admitted? Once, the gorilla was a myth. Once, the coelacanth was declared extinct for 60 million years, until it surfaced alive in a fisherman's net. Once, the giant squid was nothing more than a drunken tale. Reality has always been stranger than denial. If there are titans in the trenches, perhaps they remain unseen not by chance, but by choice. Survival in the abyss demands silence, patience, invisibility. The greatest predators may not reveal themselves until necessity forces them. And when they do, it will not be on our terms. Speculation slides into fear when we remember this. The ocean is vast, and we have explored less than 5% of it. The Mariana Trench alone could hide mountain ranges. In such wilderness, what could possibly stop evolution from creating predators greater than anything we dare imagine? Science assures us that the largest known animal is the blue whale. But assurance is not truth. It is merely comfort. In the blackest depths, there may be life forms that laugh at our measurements, bodies that dwarf our ships, hungers that dwarf our understanding. And if they exist, what then? Would we classify them? Hunt them? Or would they hunt us? The abyss does not care. It has had millions of years to craft its secrets, shaping flesh into monsters that obey laws we do not yet comprehend. Perhaps when the bloop roared across the Pacific, it was not ice-breaking, but lungs-filling. Perhaps the upsweep is not a geological groan, but a conversation between titans we cannot see. Perhaps our microphones have already heard them, and we are too afraid to admit it. For in the abyss, where light dies and patience rules, life may not stop its strange. It may grow to terrifying. It may grow to Leviathan. And we, with our fragile submarines and fragile faith in science, may be nothing more than prey that has not yet been tested. The ocean keeps its secrets well. And the deepest waters, the places where light is crushed into silence, seem hungriest for them. Some expeditions return with data and wonder. Others return with whispers. And some never return at all. History remembers the triumphs, descents that made headlines, discoveries that became museum trophies. Yet hidden in the archives are darker accounts. Missions that vanished, voices cut off mid-transmission, explorers who resurfaced but refused to speak of what they saw. In 1961, a prototype submersible descended off the coast of Japan. It never rose again. Officially, its fate was attributed to mechanical failure. But among divers who helped search the wreck site, there were hushed accounts, glimpses of impossible shapes through the silt, distortions too vast to belong to machinery. The divers did not linger. Their reports never made it into the final record. Years later, during the Cold War, a Soviet submersible tasked with deep-sea surveillance transmitted only fragments, static, an urgent phrase, then silence. What little was preserved speaks of movement in the abyss something following. No hull was ever found, but not all vanish. Survivors, when they speak, paint stories laced with fear. One diver described a vision of luminous patterns shimmering in the black. Geometries too deliberate to be natural, too alien to be ignored. Another spoke of an unshakable sensation, as though the abyss itself were watching, waiting. And then there are the accounts of strange lights, distant glows that pulse like lanterns, yet vanish the moment instruments turn toward them. Scientists explain these tailies as illusions. The crushing pressure, the monotony of black water, the brain deprived of reference points. It conjures hallucinations. Fear, they say, plays tricks in the deep. But if these were only tricks, why do the stories repeat, told across decades, across nations, across cultures that never met? The abyss is not empty. At times, it feels inhabited not just by creatures of flesh, but by something more pervasive, more watching. Expeditions report instruments that fail for no reason, batteries drained in an instant, compasses spinning as though the laws of Earth lose their grip. Submersibles designed to withstand the weight of mountains creak and shudder, as if brushed by hands larger than their hulls. And always, there is the silence. Missions that stop transmitting without distress calls, without warnings, their voices swallowed in an instant. Families receive condolences. Scientists receive questions. But the ocean keeps the answers. Whispers tell of a French expedition in the 1980s, cut short after 3 days. The lead researcher, once a vocal advocate of deep-sea exploration, withdrew from public life entirely, refusing interviews until his death. His notes remain locked away by his estate. Those who claim to have seen them speak of shapes too large for comprehension, and sounds that spoke without words. Other stories never reached the public eye. Classified naval documents describe sonar readings that should not exist, moving objects deeper than any known submarine, larger than any whale, faster than tectonic drift. When ships were dispatched to investigate, they returned with nothing but silence in their logs and shaken faces among their crew. The survivors' tailies converge on one chilling theme. The abyss feels alive. Some speak of visions, a city of light glimpsed in the dark, an expanse of luminous towers receding into blackness. Others recall feelings so primal they defy description, all laced with dread, as though they had stumbled into a cathedral not meant for human presence. Were these hallucinations born of stress and suffocation? Perhaps. Yet the mind does not invent scars carved into holes, or sonar echoes of shapes that should not move. And if the abyss is home to such beings, then silence itself may be their camouflage, their way of letting us peer into nothing while they peer into us. We build our machines to descend, believing steel and glass will shield us from mystery. But the trench has ways of reminding us, we do not belong here. Pressure alone can crush metal. Fear alone can crush minds. And sometimes, what waits below finds ways to break both. Not all expeditions end in disaster. Many return with data, specimens, proof of life. But threaded between the lines of scientific triumph is the shadow of loss, the missing vessels, the broken signals, the explorers who never surface again. They are the unanswered questions, the blank pages of history. And still, we keep descending. The allure of the unknown is greater than the fear of vanishing. Perhaps that is why the abyss remains patient. It does not need to reveal all at once. It can wait in silence, as it always has. For every lost expedition, for every survivor's tale of lights, of visions, of being watched, one truth emerges. The ocean's blackest depths are not barren. They are not empty. They are not ours. They are something else entirely. And when we descend, we step into their world, not explorers, not conquerors, but trespassers. And the abyss never forgets a trespasser. In the deep silence of the Cold War, when oceans became chessboards and every ripple was suspect, the United States Navy and its adversaries invested billions in listening to the deep. Beneath the surface of political rivalries lay an ocean transformed into a theater of secrets. Submarines prowled unseen, sonar arrays stretched across the seas, and every vibration, every echo, was measured and recorded. What they found, however, was not always Soviet, not always human. Dashified files thin, blacked-out fragments of truth-speak of sonar returns that defied explanation. Objects without shape, without origin, moving at speeds no vessel of the time could ever achieve. The documents use cold, clinical language, unidentified subsurface contact trajectory inconsistent with known craft. Yet behind the language, one senses the unease of the analysts. Something vast was moving beneath them, indifferent to borders, unbound by treaties. The Cold War made paranoia an industry. Anything unexplained was a potential weapon. Yet some anomalies resisted classification. One report describes an impossible echo beneath the North Atlantic, accelerating beyond Mach speeds. Another, a triangular pattern of movements in the Pacific, mapped by long-range hydrophones. When officers were pressed for answers, they buried the anomalies in footnotes, reclassified them, or marked them with the simplest of phrases. No further action required, but these files were not destroyed. They lingered like guilty memories, waiting to be pried open decades later. And when they surfaced, they revealed a question too dangerous to ask aloud. Had humanity stumbled across a presence in the abyss, a life form or intelligence whose very acknowledgement could destabilize the fragile balance of nations? Consider the year 1968. A Soviet submarine vanished in the Pacific. Officially, it was a tragic accident, a mechanical failure. Yet American records reveal a curious overlap. Sonar stations in the region recorded an anomaly, an object descending at impossible velocity, accompanied by echoes that dwarfed the size of the lost submarine. The data was filed, redacted, forgotten. What sank the Soviet vessel? The archives are mute. In 1970, off Puerto Rico, hydrophones detected a sustained signal deep beneath the trench. It pulsed, rhythmic, as if alive. Analysts noted it, compared it to whale song, then dismissed it as equipment malfunction. Yet some who reviewed the tapes swore it carried a strange order too structured to be natural, too alien to be machine. The Navy classified the tapes. To this day, they have not been released. The question becomes, why silence? Why bury echoes under bureaucracy? Because truth, in this case, would fracture more than curiosity. Imagine the Cold War calculus two superpowers, locked in suspicion, ready to launch at the faintest threat. Now imagine admitting that something unknown, untouchable, roamed the oceans beneath them. It would mean neither side was in control. It would mean humanity was not the apex predator of its own planet. Governments thrive on control, or at least the illusion of it. Files were sealed not because they revealed alien craft or abyssal leviathans with certainty, but because they revealed ignorance. Admitting, "We do not know," is more destabilizing than any enemy weapon. The abyss became a vault, its guardians bureaucrats and admirals, its prisoners the unanswered questions themselves. Whistleblowers, years later, hinted at what those vaults contained. Retired officers spoke of sonar operators who refused to return to duty after hearing the wrong sound. Some claimed entire patrol routes were altered to avoid regions of inexplicable contact. Others recalled the quiet orders to destroy logs, to erase tapes, to forget. Yet memory resists command. The stories survived, traveling like rumors through bars and basements, acquiring the cadence of forbidden truth. And still, one cannot escape the chilling possibility that the cover-ups were not merely about concealment, but about communication. The Mariana Trench itself holds classified history. In the 1980s, U.S. naval expeditions reported sonar anomalies so vast they appeared as phantom landmasses. For brief moments, sonar painted mountains rising from the abyss, only for them to vanish seconds later. Natural glitches? These were never explained, never released in full. To question them was to question the limits of human mapping, and by extension, human dominance of Earth. The secrecy breeds its own mythology. Some say the anomalies were crafts, vessels of unknown origin patrolling the depths. Others believe they were living organisms, too ancient to fit into evolutionary charts, their movements reduced to data points, because no human eye could ever behold them. Whatever they were, their silence became the Navy's silence, and silence is the loudest confirmation of all. Today, as these redacted fragments emerge, one truth crystallizes. The greatest cover-up may not be of monsters or machines, but of vulnerability. The ocean remains a blind spot in our knowledge, and governments chose to mask that blindness with secrecy. It is safer to let the public imagine Soviets or glitches than to admit to shadows no technology can explain. And so, these files whisper rather than shout. They speak in absences, in lines struck through with black ink. They are artifacts of fear, of power, and of awe. For every report that reaches daylight, there are hundreds still buried, waiting. Each one a reminder that beneath our wars, beneath our pride, lies a sea whose truths remain locked away, not because they cannot be found, but because they cannot be admitted. The cover-ups persist because they serve a purpose. They are walls built not only against enemies, but against knowledge itself. And knowledge, when it comes to the abyss, may be more terrifying than ignorance. In the frozen silence of distant moons, humanity imagines the possibility of life. Europa, with its buried ocean sealed beneath miles of ice. Enceladus, with geysers erupting like whispers from a hidden sea. For decades, astronomers have gazed outward, wondering if alien creatures swim in those abyssal waters. Yet the truth may be far closer than we are willing to believe. The Mariana Trench, blacker than the void of space, colder than the grave, is Earth's own Europa. Pressure so crushing they would liquefy steel, darkness eternal, silence absolute. And yet, even here, life persists. Creatures glow like fragments of broken stars. Organisms feed on chemical fire instead of sunlight. The abyss mocks our expectations, rewriting biology into a script no surface-born mind could compose. When NASA imagines what an alien might look like, they look to these trenches. When scientists speculate on the shapes of extraterrestrial survival, they borrow from the anglerfish, the amphipod, the glass sponge. Life here is so bizarre, so unearthly, that the boundary between terrestrial and extraterrestrial collapses. We call them Earth's creatures, but they belong as much to alien oceans as to our own. Consider the shrimp-like amphipod discovered 7 miles down, its body laced with plastic molecules absorbed from our pollution. A being adapted to pressures unimaginable, yet still etched with the fingerprints of our civilization. What might Europa's life carry if it exists? What histories written in chemistry? What scars of survival against worlds we cannot fathom? The parallels tighten with every expedition. Scientists describe hydrothermal vents in the trench, black chimneys exhaling heat in the cold abyss. Around them flourish ecosystems without sunlight, life born of minerals and chemical reactions. This is not merely a curiosity. It is a template. For beneath Europa's ice, beneath Enceladus's frozen crust, similar vents may exist harboring ecosystems built on the same alien logic. The abyss is a rehearsal, a living mirror of worlds beyond Earth. And yet, the resemblance is not only scientific, it is unsettling. Because to see the abyss as alien is to confront an idea long whispered. Perhaps the trench itself is not just a frontier, but a bridge. What if what stirs in its depths is not only native, but foreign? Not evolution's isolated experiment, but a migration from elsewhere, seeded long before humanity's rise? Some biologists speak cautiously of panspermia, the theory that life travels between worlds, born on asteroids or hidden in ice. If so, the trench might not only resemble Europa, it might share its lineage. The creatures that haunt its shadows may be cousins of something still waiting beneath distant ice sheets, connected across light years by a chain of ancient spores and survival. The thought unsettles because it reverses the question. We do not need to ask what alien life might look like. We need to ask whether we have already seen it. The lanternfish with its light suspended like a lure in eternal night. The gulper eel with its jaw unhinged beyond reason. The faceless cusk eel, a creature with no visible eyes, drifting in silence. They do not resemble the animals of Earth. They resemble the archetypes of alien imagination. History deepens the strangeness. In 1977, when scientists first discovered vent ecosystems teeming with blind shrimp and giant tube forms, they admitted it changed everything. For the first time, life had been found without sunlight, independent of the surface. NASA quietly noted the implications. If life can thrive here, then the odds of life beneath Europa or Enceladus rise from fantasy to probability. The trench was not only Earth's mystery, it was proof of concept. But speculation births fear as much as wonder. Because if abyssal life mirrors the extraterrestrial, then observing it is like gazing into a prophecy. What if these creatures are the closest humanity will ever come to alien contact? And what if the contact has already occurred? Some reports whisper of sounds recorded in the trench pulses, low moans, rhythmic beats. Scientists labeled them as natural. The groaning of shifting plates, the call of giant squids. But others suggested something different. Communication. Not whales, not rock, but voices. If alien life on Europa is expected to communicate through sound in its liquid prison, then perhaps we are already eavesdropping on a dialogue beneath our own seas. The comparison becomes unbearable when we imagine the future. One day, probes will pierce Europa's ice. They will descend into its Black Sea, cameras ready. What they find may shock the world. But what if the discovery is not new? What if it is familiar? A bioluminescent flare, a jaw lined with translucent teeth, a silhouette indistinguishable from what already stalks our own abyss. The revelation would not be of first contact, but of recognition. And perhaps recognition is the point. Perhaps the universe writes its creatures with the same alphabet. Chemical energy, pressure, darkness. Perhaps the abyss is not a singular place, but a universal law, repeating across worlds. What we call alien may simply be the deep, wherever it is found. Yet awe cannot dissolve dread. Because if the trench is a mirror of alien seas, it is also a warning. Exploration there is nearly impossible, even with our greatest machines. We can glimpse, record, but never truly conquer. What then of Europa, Enceladus, or beyond? If their oceans hold life, we will not dominate it. We will approach it as we approach the trench, with fear, humility, and ignorance. And so the abyss teaches its final lesson. To gaze into it is to look both outward and inward. Outward, toward the stars, imagining other oceans, other lives. Inward, toward our planet's own dark, where the alien is already here, hidden in the folds of Earth's deepest scars. We wonder about Europa. We speculate about Enceladus. Yet before us, beneath us, around us, there exists an alien world so close, so real, and yet so unknown. The abyss is not only a place of Earth, it is a prophecy of the cosmos. A reminder that to find aliens, we need not always look to the sky. Sometimes it is enough to listen to the silence of the sea. The abyss has always kept its distance. For centuries, it remained beyond our reach, a realm sealed by pressure, cold, and crushing dark. But now, for the first time in history, humanity dares to reach further, to mine, to probe, to drill into the blackest depths. And in our hunger for resources, we forget that these depths are not empty. They are alive, they are ancient, and they may not forgive intrusion. Already, corporations draw maps of the seafloor, carving invisible grids across uncharted plains. Machines are tested, jaws of steel designed to scrape mineral nodules from sediment untouched for millions of years. Scientists warn that even a single pass of these machines will stir plumes of suffocating silt, smothering fragile ecosystems before we even understand them. Yet the warnings go unheeded, drowned in the language of profit and progress. It is hubris repeated a pattern as old as empire. We once thought forests endless, rivers inexhaustible, skies immune to smoke. Now we march the same path into the abyss. But unlike forests and skies, the deep sea holds secrets we do not yet measure. To disturb, it is not only to kill what lives there, but to awaken what hides there. For in those trenches dwell beings shaped by pressures no human body could withstand. Creatures whose lifespans may stretch across centuries, evolving in silence, unseen. What happens when their fragile balance is broken? Some oceanographers whisper of predators we have yet to classify, their existence hinted at in half-seen sonar echoes and gouges in submarine hulls. These may be outliers, dismissed as myths, but the pattern remains. Every time humanity believes the abyss harmless, it resists in ways we cannot predict. We call it mechanical failure. We call it miscalculation. Rarely do we call it what it feels like: punishment. Even without monsters, the risk is profound. The abyss is the Earth's stabilizer, regulating heat, absorbing carbon, storing mysteries of climate and chemistry. To tear at its floor for gold and cobalt is to gamble with planetary systems we barely comprehend. A single disruption could cascade outward like a ripple that becomes a storm. The abyss may not rise in fury, but it can let the world above collapse on its own. Yet history suggests more chilling possibilities. Survivors of failed dives speak of the uncanny, the sense of being watched, followed, even hunted in the dark. Lights that flickered without reason. Instruments that recorded anomalies never explained. What if these are not hallucinations born of pressure and fear? What if they are glimpses of guardians, life so foreign it perceives intrusion as threat? And still we descend. Submersibles pierce trenches. Robotic harvesters lower toward the plains. Each descent is framed as triumph, but beneath the triumph is denial. Denial that we may be intruding where we were never meant to walk. Denial that silence does not mean safety. Civilizations of the past told stories of forbidden depths. Ancient myths spoke of sea gods enraged by human arrogance, leviathans unleashed when boundaries were broken. We now call those myths primitive. Yet the logic is eerily timeless. Disturb the abyss, and something stirs. Whether it is natural or unnatural does not matter. The result is the same: calamity. The question, then, is not whether we can mine the deep sea. It is whether we should. For in our race toward profit, we ignore the most obvious truth. Some places remain unspoiled for a reason. Not because they are empty, but because they are full. Full of secrets, full of danger, full of life that does not belong to us. And perhaps, in our hunger, we will learn the oldest lesson of all, that the abyss does not need to rise against us. It need only remain what it has always been. Vast, alien, indifferent. In the face of such indifference, our machines, our ambitions, even our species, are fragile beyond measure. The abyss stares back not with malice, but with silence. Yet silence is not forgiveness. Silence is warning. And the deeper we go, the louder that warning becomes. We end where we began, in the dark. The abyss stretches endlessly, deeper than imagination, more silent than any cathedral, more eternal than any empire. It is the black wound in the planet, the place where light surrenders and pressure rules. For centuries we have called it empty. But perhaps emptiness is only what we tell ourselves when we cannot bear the alternative. What if the abyss is not a void, but a presence? Not vacant, but inhabited? The trench holds life we can scarcely comprehend, creatures whose forms defy biology, whose strategies of survival seem more like invention than instinct. And yet, Even these may not be the true inhabitants. For every strange fish we catalog, there lingers the suspicion that something greater watches from the margins, something patient, something old. Myths of leviathans, kraken, and gods of the deep were dismissed as dreams, but history whispers through repetition. Across cultures, across centuries, humanity's oldest fear remains the same, that beneath the waves are eyes. Eyes that see us, eyes that wait. Silence itself becomes part of the mystery. The trench does not rage, does not roar, does not reveal. It waits in stillness. And perhaps that stillness is deliberate, a quiet veil drawn to shield us from what should never be disturbed. Silence as a warning, not an absence. Our species thrives on curiosity, on breaking seals, opening doors, trespassing boundaries. We climb mountains because they rise. We split atoms because we can. We descend into the abyss because it is there. Yet each victory carries a hidden cost, the reminder that knowledge is not always safety. Some truths are not gifts. They are traps. Consider the possibility that the abyss already knows we are here, that each probe, each dive, each sonar ping is not an intrusion but an announcement. A signal echoing into the black, telling whatever listens that humanity has arrived. We imagine ourselves explorers, but perhaps to the watchers below, we are intruders knocking at a sealed door. And what if they answer? Not in a way we recognize, not with voices or signs, but with silence that deepens, with machines that fail, with explorers who never return. We call these coincidences, errors of engineering, hallucinations under pressure. But patterns emerge, the sense of being observed, the flicker of lights that should not exist, the weight of dread that presses heavier than water itself. These may not be accidents. They may be messages. For the first time in history, our species peers into a frontier that has resisted every conquest. Land was tamed, skies mastered, even space breached. But the abyss remains unconquered, not because it cannot be reached, but because it will not be taken. And if there are watchers below, their silence may be the truest form of resistance. Perhaps they have always been there. Perhaps they were here long before us, before continents formed, before the first creature crawled onto shore. To them, we are the intruders, fragile shadows passing across the skin of a world they already own. They do not rise to greet us because they do not need to. Time is their weapon, patience their power. They know we cannot last. The abyss, then, is not only a place, but a mirror. When we descend, we confront not only strange life, but the reflection of our own hunger for knowledge, for control, for dominion. We stare into the dark, and the dark stares back, indifferent yet aware. And in that gaze, we see the truth we fear most. We are not ready. Humanity tells itself that the future belongs to the brave. But bravery without wisdom is only arrogance dressed as courage. We may continue to probe, to pry, to strip minerals from the seafloor, to drill into the unknown. But every step deeper may be one step closer to a door that should never be opened. What waits beyond it may not roar. It may not strike. It may simply watch. And in its silence, we will understand too late that we were warned. The trench will remain long after us, silent as ever, deeper than memory, older than history. Whether or not something stirs within it, the message is the same. Some shadows are not meant to be illuminated. Some questions should not be asked. Some secrets keep themselves for a reason. And so, as we close our descent, one truth lingers with a weight heavier than water. The abyss does not need to destroy us. It only needs to wait for us to destroy ourselves, blinded by the illusion that the dark is empty. We searched for life. What we found instead was silence. But in that silence, something listens.